this country producing famous people as well. You could remember Hayes with Crawford Penny or Claude.
Coming around towards 6:20 in Trinidad and Tobago. I hope many of the young people remember Hazley Crawford, as we are hearing from Tobago Crusoe in relation to outstanding performers and athletes and so many others in Trinidad and Tobago. As we get going with the start of our first interview segment on this Monday morning, start of the working week for many people, restrictions on gathering because of COVID-19 did not deter the trade union movement over the weekend, as they came together virtually to send a message to the government. They are asking the government to meet and treat with outstanding wage negotiations for workers. Trade unions followed up their virtual meeting with a motorcade on Saturday under the theme United to Fight. Unions are also concerned about retrenchment exercises that are ongoing, privatization in relation to state entities. Well, we're joined by two personalities to give us some perspective on that from the trade union perspective. We have Joseph Remy, President General of FITUN, and Michael Annisette, President General of the SWWTU and General Secretary of NATOC. And of course, Mr. Remy is also President of the Credit Union League, we should also point out. He's also a former Trinidad and Tobago under-19 opening bowler. Since I learned that, I have some greater regard for him because of my cricket bias, I have to say. But we wouldn't let him off easy. We'll deliver some bouncers at him this morning. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning to you, folks. Good morning to you, Comrade Annisette. How are you doing?
Yeah, morning, Comrade Remy, and let me express my thanks to the TV6 for taking this initiative. I think it's an initiative that is needed at this point in time so that Labour can put their perspective outside in the general public domain.
Right. Well, let's take that right away, Mr. Annisette. Before I go to Mr. Remy, isn't it inevitable that there would be retrenchment, there would be a degree of pain that has to be felt by the workforce in Trinidad and Tobago, given the nature of our economic circumstances, Mr. Annisette?
No, I don't share that philosophy. I will refer to the ILO studies that has been done and by some economic intellectuals on behalf of the ILO that speaks to wage-led growth and job-led growth. What that means is that research would have demonstrated that the economies that practice wage-led growth and also job-led growth are economies that is going to come out of any recession faster than those economies that practice the traditional type of economics, which is as soon as there's a pain, workers pay the ultimate price first, thereby interfering with your economy. The concept is, if there is no one to purchase and buy your goods and services, your economy inevitably going to collapse to an extent where it's almost impossible for you to get out of that cycle. It would normally take between 12 to 10 to 15 years. Using that kind of philosophy of retrenchment, taking away workers' rights and workers' benefit, decent wages is marginalized and the labor market. And I want to make this fundamental point here. The labor market and labor relation lies at the core of any social transition in any society. And when you interfere with the labor market, like any other market, you destroy your economy in a substantial way. So I just want to put that on the table so that we can debunk that misrepresentation, that Chicago economic philosophy where the market forces is left on its own, unhindered. And when that is done, the economy is going to reap the reward.
And before I go to Mr. Remy, could you point to any specific examples of countries which have been successfully practicing that model endorsed by the ILO?
Yeah, let me look at Switzerland. Okay, I could use that as a model. Let us look at the European countries. Let us look at Germany, who would have come out of the recession quicker than any other country. Let us look at China, and then you may say, no, China is a communist, but that is not the issue. The issue is that they practice a model that speaks to wage growth, and that led to China economy is the only is one of the economies that would have grown 2.5% during the COVID period, which did not gel with what the World Bank was saying as it relates to the economic growth given the pandemic situation.
Mr. Remy, good morning to you. Thanks very much again for making yourself available in what we hope to be a bit of an expanded discussion on not just philosophy but the practicalities in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you endorse that perspective from Mr. Annisette, that the model that we are working with is totally skewed in the wrong direction?
Definitely, Faz, 100% endorsement. We have discussed this as joint federations, and we are convinced more than ever now that the approach that we are seeing that has been taken is really wrong. And let's take examples. Today, historically today is Martin Luther King, day, and it's a celebration. But to tell you how serious this thing is and that workers are mobilizing and organizing globally. Amazon workers are voting today for trade union representation. Amazon, who we all depend on now in terms of that global trade and everything. Google workers have organized themselves into trade unions because they have understood now that the economic model that has been practiced has been working against the interests of the working class. And people are now organizing themselves more collectively to push back against what we're seeing as the ravages of the economic model, which has been exposed by the pandemic. We want to blame the pandemic for everything. But what the pandemic has done is to strip naked and bare the fallacy of some of the economic models that have been practiced, which Comrade Annisette spoke to. And look at what we are fighting against. We are fighting against thousands of retrenchment, privatization, the disregard for poor people. We have increasing prices. You hear the chambers were on set recently talking about the potential increase in prices. Crime and insecurity has now reached a point where citizens are very scared. And then we continue on the line of these neoliberal policies, and which we believe is carrying us to a level that is not comfortable. And as such, we are convinced now more than ever that we have to organize the working class, pull them together, and the activities over the weekend is the beginning of a series of activities that we believe is necessary to educate all the workers across the different functionalities in the country, bring them to a level of understanding and appreciation of the challenges that we are up against, and how we pool together our resources to ensure that we minimize as much as possible what we see as the deliberate attempt to stymie the progress of the working class and to strip workers bare of some of their fundamental rights. And that is why I am totally in agreement with the position adopted by the comrade, and we are coalescing together as the federations to see how much we could bring relief to the workers in Trinidad and Tobago.
But Mr. Remy, is it practical to think that is ever going to happen, or at least in the short term, in Trinidad and Tobago of today, either from the government side or from the private sector side? And therefore, by agitating and raising the awareness of workers, aren't you therefore jeopardizing the jobs that they now hold if they were to engage in activism to promote the agenda that you are encouraging?
But when you say promote an agenda, is defending the rights of workers promoting an agenda? I think what we are doing is standing up and defending the rights of the working class. And all we are saying is that, yes, we accept the fact that we are in a pandemic. We accept some of the consequences of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, the trade union movement is one of the most critical social partners in this relationship. And Comrade Annisette spoke about the ILO. The ILO speaks to the issue of social dialogue. And social dialogue, this trade union movement is an integral hub in that dialogue process. And as such, we are saying, engage in meaningful discussions to ensure that at the end of the day, we find solutions that in the best interest of everyone. It can't be a one-size-fits-all or one-sided kind of approach where things are being rammed down the throats of the working class, and they must accept it. And as he say, the only solution people find in these times are to retrench workers. They are not looking at other solutions that we can all work together to bring about a different kind of resolution to these problems. And that is why we believe if we educate the workers, then they will understand. And this is not about trying to take the thing in a different direction without understanding the economic realities, but it is trying to ensure that the burden of adjustment are shared equally and equitably among all the sectors of the society.
And before I go back to Mr. Annisette, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Remy, as to whether or not the trade union movement in Trinidad and Tobago has dropped the ball on this issue, as to whether or not they've been agitating for this level of awareness of an alternative consistently, because the feeling is that the labor movement was caught on the hop by the government of the day with this whole issue of patriotic energies, and therefore the unions had to zip their lip and stay quiet in the hope of getting the refinery at Pointe-a-Pierre. And now we are still waiting. We haven't heard nothing, and the unions stand accused of hypocrisy for staying quiet on this issue as well, under the cover of the non-disclosure agreement. Has the trade union movement been caught napping over the last 18 months on this obvious tsunami?
I don't agree with that position, Fazil. I think, I remember and I could recall vividly, there were times when the society was saying that the trade union movement need to take a leading role in some economic developmental activities. Now that we are heading there, you find that people are saying that we are compromising our issues. And there are some that saying that they should remain under the rubric, under the four walls, and the four corners of industrial relations and collective bargaining and dispute handling. And we are saying no. We believe that we are an integral part of the society and we have an important role to play. If we get into business, it is going to be run in a professional manner, in a manner that is not going to compromise the integrity. Look at what happened in the United States of America. And do they have a similar kind of model? And we like to practice everything that the USA have, but we only like to take the negatives and bring it into our society. When we are taking the positives and bringing it here, we are chastised and challenged. And we are saying sometimes some of the things you do, you will get opposition, you will get challenges, but we have to stick to what we believe is in the best interest of the working class and advance on. And I don't think that the movement has compromised themselves with the patriotic issue. The patriotic would have signed a non-disclosure agreement. The other trade union members don't have a clue of what is taking place. So what are they going to talk about? And to me, the whole issue is that we believe the government has stalled a lot in terms of making a decision on this particular critical issue. And we are saying it publicly that we believe it is time that something needs to be said about what is happening with the state of the refinery and the progress in terms of the negotiation with Patriotic going forward. But we can't get into the details of the issue, particularly some of those who are deeply involved in a business transaction of such detail as that.
Mr. Annisette, getting back to you on this model that we started our discussion in this direction, is it practical to think that the authorities, those who make the decisions, when we hear about this national tripartite accommodation, or the NTA, where business, labor, government are supposed to come around the table and discuss issues and so on, is there any indication whatsoever that there's any sort of interest in that sort of transformation? And that's why I'm posing it this way to both you gentlemen, that while it sounds good in theory and in practice in other jurisdictions, there is no indication from those who make the decisions that they're interested in that here. So you're raising it as a point of relevance, but Mr. Annisette, it's not going to happen here.
No, you see, again, if I take your argument, I can go back to 400 years of slavery. Okay, and when people were saying that, hey, we're going to remain slaves, I can go back to 1960. Is in the 60s that Africans were allowed to vote in the United States. We would have said that we'll never see a black president of the United States. We would have seen Ella Park stood up and that created evolution in terms of the rights of African people in America. So the point that I am making is that if you go in the context of negativism, if you don't have a vision, if you don't understand what you want as a people and as a constituents of society, and the working class is an integral part and a fundamental part in any society. And I support what Comrade Remy is saying, and I would like to get an opportunity to deal with the petrotrain issue. But the point is, COVID-19 would have made clear, and as Remy rightly said, and naked, the question of the importance of the labor movement and the working class in any economy. Who was outside there discharging the cargo to make sure that Trinidad and Tobago functioned? Who was there running the electricity? Who was there in the pharmacies? Who was there cleaning up the offices, the MTS workers? Who was there driving the buses to ensure that people were transported to their workplace? It was the transport workers. WASA workers was there, the daily rated workers. So the point that I want to make, when you look at the realities and not the philosophies and not the speculations, the reality of history would have demonstrated when workers come together, united, and when workers begin to seek their interests as a body, as a constituency, as a class, and we have to talk about class now, the working class, we begin to make the kind of transition that is necessary. Because power, you have to speak truth to power. Power only understand the power of the working class when they feel it in their pockets. And we are the consumers. And if we educate our workers, and education and knowledge is the first principle that you have to look at in order to do the transition from workers understanding that your solution is not in the political parties. Your solution is not in PNM. Your solution is when we get together as a people and demand what we want for ourselves and demand that we want a better society as a people. So our children, you understand, will be able to live in a society where income distribution and wealth distribution is not distorted like it is presently. Yes, we have a task. Yes, we have a responsibility. Yes, it is going to be hard because, it will be impossible for some business people to understand the trade union movement. And let me make one final point. All over the world, the issue of workers' cooperative as a model within society is now taking root and is taking serious roots. And I'll give you another example. The National Trade Union Center would have embarked on a financial program to speak to what was happening to the workers in Trinidad and Tobago when we launched a we loan. All right, a we loan that was oversubscribed. And you know what was the most important thing about this? There were some government entities that told the workers they weren't going to distribute the salaries, although the salary deductions, thereby denying those workers the opportunity to apply for that unsecured loan. Now, that is an initiative that no one has spoken about. We are now in the process of talking about a food cooperative for workers in Trinidad and Tobago, whereby the trade union movement will own and manage this food co-op and give competition to the masses and the price marks in terms of competitive price and having the kind of heart that is necessary to bring to the forefront that is workers first and people first and the disadvantaged and the voiceless.
Well,
So that
let's
the
just
trade
pause for a
union
moment,
movement-
Mr. Annisette, because we have to take a break. And I know there's still quite a bit of ground we want to cover and get some important points
Yeah.
across in
Yes.
relation to the challenges that are faced by working people in Trinidad and Tobago, given the state of the economy, given all of the forex challenges, given the concerns about more retrenchment to come. But as we go to the break and then we return to our dialogue with both Mr. Annisette and Mr. Remy, we continue to urge you to be safe. Here's a reminder of the COVID-19 protocols: to wear the mask over your nose and mouth properly when you go out in public, keep a safe distance, 6 feet or 2 meters, stay home if you're ill, clean and sanitize those hard surfaces, especially those cell phones, and wash your hands often with soap and water or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. We'll be back right after this.
Just believe they went down there for old dog and line. If you don't believe the crew, please don't doubt him at all.
Your right or your left hand, resin is straight apprehension in police detention. Charge with
Well, our Facebook competition is very much underway. Trinbago, you're nice. Here's a submission from Azar Khan of Sunny Ladu Road at McBean Village in Cuba. It is the flower of the wonder of the world plant. And here are a couple of submissions from another viewer. This first one captured at Mosquito Creek, and a pretty dramatic one with the grey clouds while driving back from Rusalak with San Fernando Hill in the distance. And now a sunset at Rivulet Road that was taken yesterday. Thanks very much for those images. Go up on our Facebook page to get all the images and you can vote on them. We close off the voting at 7:50. Let's continue our dialogue with our two Labour Movement representative, Joseph Remy, President General of FITUN, also involved with the Credit Union Movement, Michael Annisette, President General of SWWTU and General Secretary of NATUC. Mr. Remy, we're talking maybe a bit theoretical with some of our discussion in our first interaction, but let's be real about the situation right now. Whatever you or others may wish to happen in the trade union movement about a transformation of the economy, the reality is on the ground is that layoffs are happening, retrenchment is happening, businesses looking at the situation as far as their workforce, given the economic circumstances. From what we understand, the Lake Asphalt situation is very much on the front burner for the labour movement. What can you tell us about that?
Well, what is of major concern to us is, again, the unilateral action that have been taken by the government. And in this instance, it's the government, because this is a state-owned entity. You know, and from all reports coming from the representative union there, the process is very poor. It is non-existent. You know, and you are hearing the government is announcing things publicly, a la Petrotrin. Remember what happened in the Petrotrin situation? There were public announcements prior to the anything happening, no consultation. So a decision has already been taken, and then you talk to the union thereafter, after the fact. So we have that issue at Lake Asphalt. We also have the issue of layoffs threat at Hilton, you know, where the Communication Workers Union is the representative union. Retrenchment at Yara. We have the most blatant disregard for the industrial relations practices is Lennox Petroleum, where they are refusing to honor a court judgment. That to me is a travesty, and nobody is really pulling Lennox Petroleum to task. I'm not hearing the business chambers talking about this. They are trying to defend something that is indefensible. You know, we're talking about the planned retrenchment of 1,000 workers at Wassa. We're talking about T and Tech, and then Comrade Annisette will definitely talk about the port, because I think that is his baby and he has all the information there to deal with that. What is going to happen when the gas stations are sold, the NP gas stations are sold? What is going to happen to NP? What is going to be the role of NP? So what you're seeing are ominous signs for the workers in Trinidad and Tobago. We are having issues where even at the teachers, at the level of the teachers, there is no consultation. And what the minister is doing is to call stakeholders meeting under the guise of consultation, disregarding the provisions of the collective agreement. That is a fundamental breach of good industrial relations practices. There is a collective agreement that must be honored. And we are saying, yes, we are in a pandemic, but that does not give you an excuse for breaking the law and flouting good and proper industrial relations practices. And as such, we are saying the ground is shaking, and we have to stabilize that. That is the role of the trade union movement at this time.
And Mr. Annisette, I know when we spoke, I think it was about a week ago, you were coming off the long run in relation to the port issues and the two boats, the one that is here already, APT James. I had to cut you short, but now we have the opportunity for you to elaborate on that issue because this has been presented by the government of the day as responding to the needs of the people who use the sea bridge, especially the people of Tobago, to present a reliable sea bridge service. What is your issue with that, Mr. Annisette?
Yes, okay, well, yeah, you see, again, let us deal with historical data because facts do not lie. The sea bridge fiasco started when the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport, Rowan Sininon, determined that he would have allowed the fast ferry, the Galacia, to leave Trinidad and Tobago. And he did that on the basis of not taking advice from all the major stakeholders, even the Port Authority Board, who suggested that the contract be extended to 18 months. He told us in a meeting, and he cannot deny it, that he could get a boat tomorrow in Trinidad. Let the vessel go. And we attempted to advise him is not so the thing is going to go. And this is going to wreak havoc in Trinidad and Tobago because the sea bridge, it is critical. But the question that one has to ask, why it is that the Minister of Works and Transport was so insistent and persistent in seeing that vessel go, why it is that the board that Fodi Ferreira was part of was dismissed, because Fodi Ferreira said that they were constructively dismissed. Why it is that the recommendations of the board was not heeded by the Minister of Works and Transport. And I am saying in any other country, that minister would have been fired because he took a decision as a line minister that placed Trinidad and Tobago in a very economic precarious situation. How do we quantify now? How do we quantify the failure of the minister, to do what he was supposed to do? His failure has caused us over 500 million TT dollars for one of those vessels, I am told. But the sad thing about it is that the government made a decision. They are now bringing in foreign ratings and officers. Although we have qualified officers in Trinidad and Tobago, qualified ratings to manage those vessels, 1, 2. And let me tell the general public that all is required, because all those officers are qualified internationally, and therefore all is required to work on that vessel. You do what we call in the maritime industry a type rated course, which might be 13 trips. Why is there this need to do what the government is doing? And I will tell you why. The government sent out misinformations and total lies outside there, which told the general public that the workers in the port were destroying the vessels. The government recently brought in a new vessel, which was the APT James, and then they said they had to put security there to protect the vessel. What does that mean in reality? What was the minister trying to say? I mean, you bring in a new vessel, and that is to keep in the minds of the general population that the workers on the port are destructive. The very same narrative that they use in Petrotrin. And one has to be careful. And I challenge the government today, and I challenge the minister to engage the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union in a debate. Are you aware that the vessel has come? They have launched the vessel, and the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union was not invited to attend any one of those functions, but that is not important. What is important to me is the mindset of this government when they attempt to marginalize the workers and by extension their representative. What was the reason for the government taking away the operations of the ferry service from the Port Authority and putting it in the hands of NITCO? That was an attempt to decertify the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union because of how the act is. We are the recognized majority union. And how does the government explain that within the Port Authority Act, The Port Authority has the mandate to manage the sea bridge. And we are seeing a dictatorship. And we are seeing a disregard, a callous disregard for trade unions and workers' rights that is being practiced by this government. That is frightening. And I want to raise the question to the general public again. Can the government tell us what was the cost for the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, allowing the vessel to go by refusing to sign a charter party agreement, which is an international norm. If you have a vessel operating in your country, a foreign vessel, and you charter the vessel, you must sign a charter party agreement. And the minister refused to do that. That is the genesis of what is happening in the sea bridge, you know. And no one said anything about it. I was attacked, I'm gonna say my union, by the minister, by the prime minister, when we said there is a need to dredge the port of Spain. And what the prime minister said on 9.5, that the union was asking the government to spend $50 million to dredge for the fast ferry, the Galicia, which was misleading because the port of Spain haven't been dredged for all these years. And as I speak to you, that is some of the money that the government is seeking now to get from private enterprise in order to dredge the port of Spain for vessels, which is Panamax vessels. And because of the Panama Canal opening, you are getting bigger vessels. We told the government that 5 years ago, but they didn't take us on. They make it into political football, and they attempted to attack the union and Michael Annisette personally. And those are the realities. Those are the realities. Those are the realities.
Mr. Annisette,
public. And I want to make the point. Just let me. We have
sure.
Local qualified officers here. We have local qualified rateds who are employed. When you bring in those two vessels and you fail to employ them, what you are doing, you are denying local people the right to work on a vessel that we, the taxpayers, paid for. Is we, the taxpayers, pay for those two vessels? It's not the Prime Minister, it's not Rohan Sinanan, and I want the public to understand that. And therefore, we must demand that local content on that vessel must be absolutely necessary. It have officers from Tobago. It have captains that left the port, the Tobago port.
We get the point, Mr. Annisette. But you've made the point. And let me just, because the time is going by very quickly, and because there are so many issues. Yes. Let me go back to Mr. Remy for a final point quickly. Even though I'm sure Mr. Annisette will jump in, want to jump in, but we don't have time to accommodate a great elaboration. But the issue is, Mr. Remy, and I know you've heard this many times before, that the situation is, when it comes, and we're talking about state enterprises as well, privatization and so on, that the evidence is there. The NCRHA came into the spotlight with the Express expose yesterday and the health shock headline today in the Express, that when it comes to public or government control, state enterprise, public services, it is inefficient, it is corrupt, it doesn't serve the best interest of the people. So you have to privatize, whether people like it or not, Mr. Remy.
Well, first, you know, and I always hear that mantra, and we always take the negatives and try to run down the road of negativity. And I'm saying we don't believe in that principle. We know what are some of the systemic issues that give rise to the inefficiencies in the public service, and we are saying we must fix it. But first, in closing, I want to say there are a lot of things we are fighting against. Yes, privatization is one. The issue of the standard of living for the small man, the poor and the voiceless, that's what the labor movement do. A decent standard of living. You know, we talk about the utilities and public service. And first, in closing, I just want to say the government, and not just the government, all the other sectors must recognize the value of the trade union movement. And I just want to quote the Pope Francis when he talked about what is happening with this whole pandemic. He said, the grave loss of millions of jobs as a result of the virus as evidence of the need for politicians to listen to popular movements, union marginalized groups, and to craft more just and social and economic policies. So as that is so evident now, that the time is called to that. And yes, we understand the issue of inefficiencies in the public service, what is the root cause? The root cause is political manipulation and political interference. And that is the call we are making at this time.
Joseph, Remy, and Michael Annisette, thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time to be with us this morning to elaborate within the time constraints as best as you could on a number of issues that are very much on the front burner for the trade union movement, for the labor movement in Trinidad and Tobago. And as we go to the break, here's a submission by Joan Riggs Dyer captured at the Guayaguayari main road. And now for a video, it's a rainbow captured at the home of a Tuna Puna viewer. Thank you very much for those live images as well as we go to the break at the top of the hour.